Welcome to Northwoods Kindred. I'm your Gothi Bodvarr, and on this channel we discuss all things Asatru Kindred related. So hit that subscribe button if you want to see how we do it in the Northwoods. On this video we're going to talk about one of the most controversial topics in Asatru today, the Mjolnir amulet. Coming up. Now, right out of the gate, I want to say that I use Mjolnir, Thors Hammer, and Hammer all interchangeably. So I don't require a correction. I understand it, but I will use them interchangeably. If you can't handle that, keep moving. So in this video, what we're going to do is go down just a list of questions that I've gotten here on Discord. I asked for questions about this topic, as well as questions I've gotten in the PMs and everything on TikTok and other social media. So I kind of put together all the main questions and rephrased them for this video. So hopefully this answers your question. If I don't answer a question that you have about the Mjolnir, go ahead and put it down in the comments, and then I'll get to it. I'll either answer you in the comments, or maybe we'll do an update video coming up. The first question is, what is a Mjolnir? What is a Thors Hammer? What is the hammer sign? Things of that nature. So the Mjolnir is the mighty weapon of Thor, which is used by that god to protect not only the gods, but the people here in Midgard, or Middle Earth. Thor is the protector of man. He's the son of Odin, and he is, in a lot of cases, he's the patron of the common man, the farmer, the fisherman. They look to Thor for protection while they go about earning a living for their family, their tribe. And because of that, the hammer was used as a symbol of the god Thor and the protection that he provides. It evolved into how we use it today. The physical hammer as an amulet or a piece of jewelry came a little bit later, but prior to using that, the hammer sign was used to bless ceremonies, births, other things that were sacred to them that they would want to put some sort of a protection spell on. They would use the hammer sign, which was later evolved into the sign of the cross that you see the Christians doing in the Middle to Late Viking Age, or the conversion. We also use a variant. We use a larger hammer, either a real hammer that's been repurposed, or sometimes even a decorative wooden hammer, or something larger and a little bit more significant we use in ritual. If you watch this video I did on the solo bloat, it will show you basically how to use the hammer sign, and I even have a hammer ring that I use in conjunction with a hammer sign. So all of those things are possible. That all they really do collectively is represent the power, the might, and the protection of the Norse god Thor. Now, during the Viking Age, the Viking period, the hammer was worn as a symbol that they were still of the old faith, the old way, the Fornsidre, and that it did exactly that. It represented protection from the Norse god Thor. And it wasn't uncommon to see people wearing a hammer as a, almost not a retaliation, but as a reaction to the Christians wearing the cross. I don't know which came first. There is some speculation that the hammer was used in the Nordic and Germanic countries as a protection amulet prior to Christianity, but I don't know that there's any truth in that. I think the cross was a symbol of Christianity first, because when Christianity was converting and becoming the dominant religion on the planet, they wanted everybody to know who they were, so they wore that loud and proud. And as a reactionary method in the Northlands, they adopted the Thor's hammer symbol, at least more common amongst the people, to show whether they were pagan or Christian. So whether or not it was reactionary, we do know from grave digs and other finds, bog finds and whatnot, that the hammer did exist and was worn as a piece of jewelry, possibly a protection amulet, during the period when the Vikings roamed the earth. Can I wear my hammer with other protection symbols? And the answer is yes. I wear mine often with this. This is a hog's tooth. And this is a .308 round that is giving to graduates of Marine Scout Sniper School. It's a protection amulet. The idea is that this is the bullet that's meant for me, so as long as I keep it protected and have control of it, it'll never be used against me. So I can move freely about the battlefield. So I can wear both of these protection amulets at the same time, and neither one takes away from the other. This, wearing my hog's tooth, doesn't mean that I have a lack of faith in the Norse gods, and wearing the hammer doesn't mean that I have a lack of faith in the sniper gods. Do I have to wear a hammer as a Norse pagan or Asatru? And the answer is a resounding no. You do not have to wear one. You're not going to get looked down on poorly by the gods. Well, I can't really speak for the gods, but I know that there's a lot of people who don't wear them. They prefer other symbols like a Valknut, eagle, a raven, a claw, a bone, anything they want, or nothing at all. And that's perfectly fine. It's a personal choice to whether you want to wear a hammer as a protection amulet or you want to represent your religion or not. Some people just don't like stuff around their neck. There's no drawback to not wearing one, but you're absolutely welcome to wear one or many other things if it calls to you. Can a woman wear a hammer? That's a big topic for debate. Women aren't supposed to have them. Women can't have them. Guess what? Women can have them. And it's more likely that if you were around during the Viking Age, you would see more women wearing it than men. And now the custom of the day for the women was to, wear their shoulders covered, often long sleeves, because the faded look on the arms, the unsun-baked arms, was supposed to be a sign of nobility. So they wore the long sleeves and everything, but they always had the open front and showed their cleavage. I don't know, a billboard advertisement, but they decorated that advertisement, and they did it by wearing gold and neck torques and chains and hammer amulets and brooches and brackets and all other forms of jewelry and decorations on the front to advertise not only their stature, but their wealth and their status in society. The hammer is absolutely able to be worn by women, and probably more customary that it was worn by women than by men during the Viking Age. Why is the hammer used in Asatru ritual? I covered this a little bit in some of the other ritual videos, but essentially it just represents the might and power of the Norse gods. Even though it's a single item, a weapon that belongs to Thor, but it's used to protect all the gods and men, so we use it in ritual as a hallowing agent to bless things. I know some Wicca and other earth-based pagan or heathen religions have different items that they use that will replace the hammer. It's essentially just a focus item, an item to focus your energy and your intent on the work you're doing, whether it be a magic wand, your knife, or various other accoutrements that you use in ritual magic. It just happens to be the choice for the Norse pagan. And it's rooted in history because they did used to bless weddings. And in two cases that I can think of, one mythological and one historical. Mythologically, Thor had to go retrieve his hammer, and he had to dress as Freya and marry the giant Thryme. When he did that, the marriage was blessed by his hammer, in which case he seized it up and killed everybody in the room because that's what he does. So that's a mythological example of the hammer, the physical hammer being used to bless a union. And then in more of a historical example is when Harald Fairhair got married, the priest or Gothi handed him the hammer and he blessed his bride and they were wed. It was a very simple, very elegant ceremony, at least the way that it's described in the saga of Harald Fairhair. Very popular question, more reactionary than usual, is a lot of people say, I don't wear a hammer because I am not dedicated to Thor. Thor is not my patron, or I don't exclusively worship Thor, so I don't wear a hammer. That's a fallacy that kind of worked its way into the system, is that you have to be dedicated to Thor. You don't have to be dedicated to Thor to wear a hammer. The hammer represents, as it did in the old days and even now, it represents the pantheon of gods, the Aesir, the Vanir, and even some of the Jotun collectively as the creator species. It represents them. It represents how they protect us. And Thor and Thor's hammer just happens to be the tool of that protection, which is why we wear it. You do not have to be dedicated to Thor. I am not dedicated to Thor, although I do Thor bloats and offer to him occasionally. He is not a prime deity in my personal practice. But I still wear a hammer. Does the hammer have to be gifted to you? Again, the answer is a resounding no. You do not have to be gifted a hammer. You can acquire a hammer in any way that feels comfortable and legal to you. You can find it, you can make it, you can buy it, you can steal it if you can get away with it. There are no limits. One of the first hammers I had, I carved out of a piece of clay on a post in Iraq with a Leatherman tool, scraping and filing and everything. A little stone, ended up being a little stone hammer, one of the first ones I've ever had. Prior to carving one for myself, I used the simple T-shaped metal pop-up key, similar to a spam key, as a hammer. And then later on in life, I made my own. Most of the hammers I have, I either bought for myself or made for myself. I've been gifted a few throughout the years, but it was many years on this path before anybody ever gifted me a hammer. So if you wait around to be gifted one, you're going to be waiting a long time in a lot of cases. So if you feel the call to wear a hammer, if it feels right to you, then acquire one and put it on. How do you earn a hammer? So this has been a hot topic for debate. Short answer, you are not required to earn a hammer. Where that came from the limited amount of research that I've done, and when I say research, essentially I've talked to ex-cons and people who've gotten out of the prison system who are Asatru within the walls. So the way that it worked for them in the clink, of course it's going to change from institution to institution, but the way it worked for the people that I've spoke to is that the Asatru collective in the prison system is very tight about the people they let into it. They gatekeep very harshly. Even, it's not about race. It's about even the white guys. Like it's a very specific set of rules to come into it. You have to understand what you're talking about so you don't sound like an ass. And they want to make sure they have to have time to, interrogate the guards or whatever they do to get information and find out that you're not somebody that's in there for violent acts against women or children, because those people aren't in very much favor even within the prison system. Certainly they're not in favor outside the prison system. So they wanted to make sure that the people that they were allowing to wear a hammer were the right people. You can untangle that however you want. The bottom line is they get out of the prison system, they stay Asatru, and they bring a lot of those rules from a system that doesn't necessarily translate to life on the outside of the prison. If you think of prison, you're talking about an ant farm. It's an ant farm with red, black, green, blue, and purple ants all living in their own little swarms and staying separate. When you come back out into the real world and you have to mix and mingle, the rules that applied in that ant farm don't apply to life at large. So the short answer is you don't have to earn it. You don't have to be gifted it. Put the hammer on and be proud to wear it. On the same lines as everything else, does the first one require a ceremony? It does not. However, some tribes have specific requirements to earn their tribal hammer. So some kindreds and collectives and fellowships have a specific hammer that they've had made up just for their group or for their tribe. And sometimes they have things to do to earn it. See, in our kindred, our children are raised up in here and they can wear a hammer from birth. Most of them are gifted one at birth. But before they can be considered a member of the tribe, they have a series of trials they have to accomplish in order to be considered participating and contributing adults. And they can accomplish that at age 12 or they can accomplish it at age 25. It's really on their motivation and their drive to accomplish that list. Now, some kindreds award that accomplishment with a specific hammer that says that they are now a voting member or they have some long-standing value to the kindred. That's separate. That's not a gatekeeping thing. That's a tribal pride thing. But sometimes we see it online and people are like, I was awarded my hammer. I earned my hammer. Dig a little deep before you start tearing them up, because you really don't understand the circumstance that they're talking about. In a lot of cases, they might not understand the circumstance for the lies and gatekeeping that we deal with at large. In other words, deal with these kind of situations with a little bit of empathy and think about the people and ask probing questions before immediately jumping to the conclusion that they belong to the gatekeeping community and that they had to earn it as opposed to just being allowed to have it in order to kind of keep people out. That's not always the case. Sometimes the wording just gets mixed up. And if that intrigues you a little bit, stick around this channel for a while, because very soon we'll be doing a video on the actual coming of age ritual, as well as the checklist and the requirements before they become a voting member of the kindred, because just because they're born here doesn't give them any authority. Does my hammer have to be blessed or purified? Yes and no. This is kind of a UPG thing. It's a very personal thing. We don't have any evidence that that was ever the case. In fact, we don't even really have a lot of evidence about. It took a long time before we even knew that the hammer was a hammer. We guessed it was a hammer. I say we, and I'm talking about people 100 years ago that were trying to figure this out. But it took a while before they eventually found a hammer in Sweden that said, "Hammer." This is a hammer in runes. So that pretty much cemented the deal that it was a hammer. So given the little bit that we actually know about it, we don't know if they ever blessed their ritual jewelry or their hammer. We don't know, but I would assume not. But they probably used some sort of a purification ritual on it or some sort of a purification magic and said, at least, at the very least, I wear this hammer in, to honor you, my patron Thor, and then put it on. Like, there's probably something they did to it. Now, I make hammers. I make these fire hammers here, and there's videos around of me doing various different things with them. But when I'm done building the hammers, I go ahead and put them through similar to an Ausavotni. You can see that here, where I bless the hammers and purify them with water, because I don't know what the individual components went through before they got to me. They could have been built with slave labor. Just because it says it's made in USA doesn't mean it was. So I don't know the saga of all the pieces and parts that I put together to create these hammers. So I like to give it a reset right then and there, dedicate them to the gods, purify them of their past, and then move forward. Is it a requirement? Absolutely not. And just because you get your hammer doesn't mean you have to put blood on it. You don't have to bury it for 9 days in the earth. You don't have to purify it with oils and waters and other bodily fluids. None of that is required. You can buy it, take it out of the package, and put it around your neck. But some people prefer to symbolically at least acknowledge that they're adding this to their ensemble as a symbol of the Norse gods, or possibly even a symbol of Thor and the protection that he provides for the wearer. I don't think you have to get any more complicated than that. Should I wear my hammer inside or outside of my clothing? That is entirely up to the wearer. Now, I've been in circumstances on both sides of that. I try to generally wear it on the outside, but there are times, maybe I'm doing work or leaning over a lot. I don't want this thing, this will take out a tooth. Like, you don't want to mess around with that. And I've got bigger, heavier ones as well. So I do wear it on the outside most of the time, unless I'm doing heavy activities, in which case I'll tuck it away to keep it clear and out of, away from harming me. It doesn't really do much to enforce the protective qualities of your amulet if it takes out a tooth. So you can wear it inside, outside. Maybe you're going to luncheon with your Meemaw and her old bitty friends. Maybe we just want to tuck it away so you don't have to have that conversation with a bunch of old grandmas. Whatever, that's entirely up to the wearer, and there's no disrespect to the gods or to man for doing that. You judge your situation and you navigate that as best you see fit. Now, here's an advantage to wearing it on the outside if you're comfortable with that. A lot of people, I understand, aren't comfortable with showing the world that they are Norse pagan. So I get that, especially if you're young or you have zealot parents and you're living in their home. I get all of that. Now, my son wore his out, and he randomly ran into some guy in Walmart, and he was like, "Oh, hey, nice shirt," because he had like a runic thing on. And he's like, "Hey, nice hammer." And then they started talking, and they found that they were both Asatru, and one of them was local, and it ended up being a long-time friendship with an individual that was met only because the visual advertisement of, "Hey, I am a Norse pagan." But sometimes, like especially where we live, up here in North Idaho, this can be frowned upon severely because it has been connected with a not so flattering past up in this area. All them guys have been chased out of here, but the scab remains, and sometimes we are judged because of that. So in some situations, that would be a perfectly legitimate response. Some people ask me if it's okay to take off their hammer. They feel like it would be a disrespect to the gods and to Thor and to their practice and to even their kindred by taking it off. They feel like once it goes on, it has to stay on forever. And I'm here to tell you, that's not the case. There are lots of people, myself included, who take their hammer off. I don't sleep with mine on. I take it off and I put it on my nightstand, and when I put it on in the morning, I say a little blessing for the day and I put it over my head. You're not required to do that either, but you can take it off if you want to shower, if you want to go for a swim, if you want to go for a run or do some CrossFit. All these things, this is a hindrance to your performance. So if you want to take it off for any reason whatsoever, or just because you just don't feel like wearing it, take it off, hang it in a place of honor, and retrieve it when you are ready to wear it again, and you will be doing just fine by the gods. There is no requirement to wear it just because you put it on once. So if I take my hammer off, what if I lose it? Bad times. If you lose your hammer, you're screwed. Kidding. I'm kidding. If you lose your hammer, you get another hammer. It hurts, especially if you're connected to it. If it's something, you've been through some stuff together. If it's been like that and you lose it, I can understand that would be a painful loss. Or a valuable hammer. This one's pretty valuable, but you have precious metals and gold chains and all kinds of other things. If you lose your hammer, I understand that there's a little bit of pain involved in that. But it's not like you're going to enlist the wrath of the gods because you hung your hammer up and forgot where you put it, or the chain broke and you lost it. It's not. That has nothing to do with them. This is a symbol for you internally to either show the world or to just feel it yourself that you are of the Norse persuasion. And there's no requirement to wear it. Therefore, there's no rules on how or when you wear it or what you do with it. So if it does happen to get lost by accident, it doesn't matter. I've thrown hammers into the sea as an offering. I'm sure that was not taken as disrespect. And just another little point on it, so you always got to kind of look at the bright side of something. If your chain broke or you lost your hammer out, you took it off at the YMCA to go for a swim and it disappeared out of your locker, that hammer may get lost and find its way to someone who needs it more than you. So in a lot of cases, the best thing to do is, mourn your loss, pick up a new one and put it back around your head without any pomp or circumstance. That hammer might be finding its way to someone who could really, really use it, like some adolescent who's found his way but couldn't possibly buy one in the presence of his parents or something like that. So you never really know how it's going to work out. So never feel like it's a loss. Feel like you've contributed to the gain of someone who can use it more than you. And most likely, that's what's going to happen. So in any case, if you do happen to lose your hammer, don't take it as a curse or some sort of sign that you disrespected the gods or that you messed up. Don't beat yourself up over it. Treat yourself like a puppy, like your best friend, and understand that the gods work in coincidences. If anything, say a quick blessing and say, may the hammer that I lost find the person who needs it the most. And potentially, somebody could find that, not knowing a single thing about the Norse gods, pick it up, research it, learn about it, be called to it, and you may have just created a new pagan in the world, and we can use all we can get. Another great question: which hammer is the right hammer? Now, there are tons of hammer designs. Some of them are historic. There's Danish, there's Swedish, there's even Germanic versions that were found in various different graves and digs and bog finds throughout history. And they're beautiful. A lot of them are super beautiful and ornate. Some of them are way plain, just like a chunked out piece of metal. And some of them hold other purposes, like my steel hammer here, which is a non-traditional design, but it's very identifiable as a Thors hammer. So there are hundreds of different designs and patterns that will suit almost anybody's taste, including the materials: silver, gold, brass, bronze, copper, steel, clay, wood. Really doesn't matter, but there will almost be a perfect fit for everyone. And there's no criteria, there's no right hammer, there's no original hammer, but there are traditional hammers that have come from various finds in history. Can any pagan wear a hammer? Yes. Especially dig around the internet, you'll see a lot of people who don't even claim to be Norse pagans. Some Druid, some Wicca True, some Brosa True. All over the place, all different sects of pagan religions, and even some Christians wear a hammer. I'm probably more responsible for putting more hammers on Christians than anybody on this planet, to tell you the truth. I've made thousands of these over the past 10 or 15 years, and a lot of my customers are Christians, and they can appreciate the symbology of it, they can appreciate the utility of it, so they buy my hammer and wear it as a Christian. So there's probably people sitting in church right now wearing one of my hammers, which I think is hilarious. So yes, anybody can wear one. You don't have to be a Norse pagan. You don't have to be dedicated to Thor. You don't even have to be a pagan. And if we want to reach back even farther and say, into the Viking Age, there were lots of merchants and traveling salespeople and some warriors and various other people that you can read snippets about here and there in the sagas who wore a crucifix and a hammer, and depending on the company, one or the other came out so that they could communicate, manipulate, or sell their wares, or whatever they would do. They would wear whichever one on the outside appeased the crowd the most. And you can even look and see the Iceland has a very specific hammer with like a dragon head on the top, and it looks like an upside down cross with an open hollow cross in the middle. That was a reaction to wearing both. So if you wear one that's sort of, it could be either, it makes it really easy to walk up to your Christian brothers and sell them some goods, and then walk up to your pagan brothers and sell them some goods, and either one of them is going to interpret that however they want to interpret it. So those have evolved over time as well. Another question that I get on occasion is, how do the people in the modern Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, how do they view the hammer through the modern lens? And I'll tell you, I've been around there a little bit, and I know a lot of people in those countries, friends and people I've served with, and I was even in Norway a few times while serving, and I found that a lot of people, Christians, wear the hammer. It's a part of a cultural identity and a connection to their past and their ancestry that doesn't really translate to a religious symbol to a lot of those people. Now, I can't speak for all the people in all the Nordic countries, but I can speak from my own experience, and of course I'm going to interrogate. If I'm in Norway and I'm talking to a friend who's in the Norwegian army and he's wearing a hammer, we're going to have a conversation, you know? And in a lot of cases, they are not pagan, but they wear these pagan symbols because it's a part of their cultural heritage, and that's perfectly acceptable. The way they look at it is they look at it as a part of their cultural heritage, and there is some gatekeeping in these Nordic countries where they don't think that us, especially as Americans, deserve to wear it. But we don't worry about those people because they don't matter in our world. Who matters in our worlds are people who can understand that it is a very small world full of a lot of diverse people with a lot of diverse interests, and anybody can do as long as what they do doesn't interfere with the freedom or the safety of anyone else. Wrapping this up, here's a couple little caveats and little things I want to cover, because I have seen some people, they order some jewelry and it hurts their neck or they get a rash. So order your Mjolnir or make it with materials that you're not going to be sensitive to. A rash on your neck is not a curse from the gods. It's cheap materials. Or it's materials that you are chemically incompatible with. So a green neck, a rash, or an allergic reaction is usually tied to materials and chemical compositions that you're incompatible with. Now, I hear this statement a lot. It's sort of the new pagan's retribution to the Christian condemnation of the pagan ways. And they say, your God was nailed to a cross, my God carries a hammer. It's a very cringy statement, and it doesn't speak to the intelligence of someone who uses that kind of verbiage. It shouldn't be a, we're better, you're better, that better. Let's start talking to each other in a way that we can educate each other. And it's much more meaningful to sit down and have a conversation about why that person would be aggressive towards you because of your hammer, as opposed to immediately insulting their God. How do you feel about it? Because if you want your buddy to come over to dinner, you don't start out by insulting his mom. You start out by complimenting him and inviting him and creating a safe and friendly space for him to come have dinner. You don't start out with an insult and then dare him to come eat at your table. Cringe. Yeah. So let's start out by educating, talking to people, and actually using our knowledge of our path. If you don't have knowledge of your path, kindly break contact and go pick up a book. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope I really did put to rest a lot of these myths surrounding the hammer. The short answer is get one, wear it, be proud of it, and don't treat it like it's a pharaoh. Treat it like it's a piece of jewelry that represents your connection to your faith. May Thor guide and protect you, whether you choose to advertise him as part of your life or not. Thor to Vigi, my friends. That's good timing. I said that was good timing. You've been acknowledged, damn it.